present his. Hello and welcome to DXgov governance discussion for Wednesday, March 1st, 1600 UTC. Welcome to March. I am going to share my screen here to go over the agenda for today. As always, we'll go over the proposal roundup, a good chunk of ones on Mainnet, a wide variety of them. So we'll go over the current live proposals and then just 4 proposals on Gnosis chain. And then just 2 discussion items for today. We'll keep it short. Just ETH. Oh, I don't want to do that. ETH Denver check-in. I'm leaving in a little bit. I don't know if there's anything else people want to check in on. Maybe there's interesting things going on in the government space. And then, want to carve out a time to have Matty G give a little bit of intro and background on his forum post here, kind of following on last week's presentation by Avantgarde and then the week before's presentation by Kapartki Guild. And then we can talk a little bit about where we're at in the process and how we should go forward from there. So let's start with the proposal roundup. So a couple different ones. So you can see Swapper Guild 2023 Q1 funding new devs. So this is specifically, I think, to bring on 2 different devs. So you can see it's the senior smart contract developer, Neil, who I think is not on this call, but sometimes is, who's been doing really great work for Swapper for the last couple months. I believe he was involved with Claros before. And then Mirko, who has been contributing for Swapper for a while, is going to come on more full time. So both of these were part of the Swapper budget that passed in December for the first half of 2023, and these were basically the contingency cost in the budget approved. The big one, of course, I think being we were at the time was looking for make sure there was another senior smart contract dev. So it's really good to see that there. This is also just a couple weeks ago, DXgov did a similar thing and bring on a new smart contract dev from the budget there. So that's set to pass in 2 days and 9 hours. So it's a big amount to 28K USDC. So this will actually go to the multi-chain multi-sig to then be bridged over to Gnosis chain and deposited to Swapper Guild or Swapper multi-sig there. And that's where, that will go. So there's that. And then we have another redemption balancer from Zagu. This one is number 4. I think Connor's leading the number of redemption balancers here. And you can see here it's for 61 DXD and I think, sorry. It's like I thought 14% voted on this redemption balancer. And I was like, that's a really strong show of support for this proposal, but this has been voted on, presumably verified there, and it will pass in 2 days and 10 hours. Then we have wrap 600 ETH through the Mimic Vault. So this is a proposal from Candy Fork. And so this is needed to post orders on CowSwap. We'll get to the CowSwap orders in a second, but you can't use native ETH with that. So we have to wrap that. And rather than send it to a multi-sig to wrap and then send back to DXDAO, we use this awesome Mimic Vault that automatically does that for it. And you can see here, it's done it in the past. The cool thing is it even takes care of gas charges too. So it just, sends, I guess that's back. No, here we go. No, internal transactions. This is the one that then sends it to DXDAO, I think. Yes, right here. So that will is 600 ETH, and so that's for basically 3 separate orders that are live now, which we'll get to in a second for the CowSwap ones, along with in conjunction with the DXC token model. So that's wrapped 600 ETH. Then we have a bunch of rep syncs, which are some of my favorite things to have. So we have Violet here, who's a longtime DXDAO contributor, I think going back to summer 2020. So you can see he's got 2.65%, but this is a request, I think, for the last, everything since August there. And so that will be, another nice minting of rep there, 2.31 million. There are 2 other rep syncs. Or 3 other rep syncs. Let me first go over the 2 that I like or enjoy. So first we have the mainnet rep sync for Melanie, and this is I think her second one here, and so you can see 0.9% rep to go with her 1.75%. And these are all proposals that have passed on Gnosis chain here. And then we have Medusa from the DXgov team doing his second one as well, very similar to Melanie's. And so I guess for these, I'm going to give my ranking of the rep sync order, the rep sync proposals in terms of what I like the most. I'll show you what his last place here. So this is from Levo Tiate, someone who has previously submitted a rep sync proposal, had worked on the DXgov team, and he had submitted the wrong amount in the previous proposal. So this is a resubmission of that proposal. I had chatted to him and told him why I thought the calculation was incorrect. And then he submitted this one, which I know is him because of the addresses here. And you can check on Gnosis chain and see the same. You can confirm it's him with that rep amount, but it's just kind of, I don't know how to say, annoying to have to verify this in there. And you can see that 1.26, and you can see that there. So it's just kind of annoying to have to do those steps themselves. So that one's in last place. I think third is Medusa here, which is very clear on what he's doing and kind of the amounts there. So there's actually some clear, but there are no links to this. And then I guess third or second place is Melanie here, because she does provide the links and kind of everything is very clearly laid out. And then I think first place goes to Violet, basically because he has a picture. And he used bold too, in addition to having all of the links to the appropriate proposals. So Violet gets the award for best rep sync from me. So anyway, those are the 4 rep syncs there. A good reminder for everyone that is, been doing, has been earning rep on Gnosis chain to make sure you're syncing that on mainnet. That's where the assets are. That's where most of the power lies. And so it's important to do those. I know there's probably some developers, DXgov, Swapper developers, maybe that have been started earning in the middle of last year, and 6 months of rep is actually a good amount. And so making sure to sync those and using these as models, but of course specifically using Violet's as the best. So those are the 4 rep syncs, and then Violet here has vesting contracts. These have not been voted on yet, just because they are a little bit more difficult to verify. I will take time to verify that the cliffs or anything are right here, but you can see these are, I think, everything for 2022. And so 2022 for those, there's a 1 year, so it's a 3-year vest with a 1-year cliff. And so that's what that should be there in this vesting contract. And you can see split it up over, I think, 4 different ones, but right now there's only 3 proposals in here. So yeah, this is, I think, I think he did a good job in terms of presenting the information and doing that for others that want to copy. And then maybe if you want some help in deploying those contracts. So that's Violet. There's 3 proposals there. And then there was just submitted this morning a D-Labs vesting contract for January and February. So this is the same thing. Presumably, not sure when the vesting date is, but I'm guessing it's like January 31st. Yeah. So those are all of the mainnet proposals that are boosted or in the boosting phase. Are there any thoughts, questions, comments about those? Cool. Let's keep rolling to Gnosis chain. Not as much activity on Gnosis chain here. Actually, this one can be closed. And then we just have these 4 proposals here. One is a DAI payout for Lucy Foss. This is actually for the work done in the fall. This had already been approved as a proposal, but there was no payment sent in that. So this is just the payment proposal, and always great proof of work from Lucy in terms of here the work, all the work being done on Carrot there, which looks really, really great. And then they have a translation bounty funding proposal from DXgov. So they think this is where we have $250 per language. And so this is a $500 one to do in Japanese and Spanish here. So I think that's a cool way of making sure of introducing more bounties to that. So that proposal still is looking for votes. And then, yeah, Candy Fork rep sync. So this is syncing the other way. So all of those ones about mainnet were people that had earned mainnet rep, but had only earned that on Gnosis chain. And Candy Fork had actually had rep on mainnet that has not been synced to Gnosis chain, primarily because when I would do rep syncs, I would tend to do them and include a month that I worked on mainnet there. So there was a disconnect there. And also when you do mainnet rep proposals, you earn mainnet there. So there's some disconnect there. And so Actually, there should be 2 screenshots here. Now I'm a little worried because I was giving judgment on who has the better proposal, and yeah, I was hoping mine went. There should be two screenshots here. But anyway, so that one, please, give some votes in the next couple days. And then there's a Nani. So this is basically like a retroactive trial period proposal. So I think this is Nani has already been onboarded for 1H 2023 through the budget. That was, I think, 2 weeks ago. There was a proposal there from Ross and the DXgov team, and this is specifically a 2,000K payment for the month of December when he was working and kind of doing his trial period there. So yeah, those are the proposals on Gnosis chain. Are there any thoughts, questions, concerns? Cool. So then we're moving on to discussion items here. Maybe we can, I don't know if there's anything for ETH Denver check-in besides I'm excited to go, and I hope if anyone is there, please do reach out. I know we have some people on the ground already, and so and sorry to those who were planning to go to DevCon this year as part of your big trip. I think that's kind of unfortunate that they announced that news the same week of ETH Denver, because I heard from several people that, if DevCon wasn't going on this year, then they would have gone to ETH Denver. So yeah. Anyway, so without further ado, there is the third post we've seen from Treasury Manager Steward Candidate Group. So we had Kaparkian 2 weeks ago to talk about their proposal to create a Treasury Guild, and then we had Avantgarde on last week in terms of what they could offer to DXDAO, and then in conjunction with those, the Contributor X and Operations Guild have been fielding different candidates through the normal onboarding process in terms of recruiting. So there's been a lot of outreach there. And one of the candidates I think we identified that was really great is Daddy Matty, wasn't sure if Matty G. So Daddy Matty, who has posted some information about himself and what he proposed to do for DXDAO here. So I thought I'd give him the opportunity to maybe introduce himself, and then for anyone to ask questions about his background, what he's proposing as services, and other things to deal with, working for DXDAO. So Matty, you want to take us away? And Matty, just before I get this, Matty's taking time from being on the slopes in Breckenridge to do this call. So very big ups for him and for doing that. And we'll be in Denver in a couple of days, but very glad you could carve out the time.
No problem. Appreciate it. And good morning, everybody from beautiful Breckenridge, Colorado. Had a night. I actually didn't do some skiing yesterday. I did some bike skiing for the first time, which was highly recommend. One of the coolest things I've ever done. But anyways, good morning, everybody. As you can see, I posted a proposal on the DAO Talk forum. Really saw a lot of great insight from the community on, what are the needs from a treasury side as well as the financial operations side. And, I think I have a good background that might be able to help with some of those needs. And so, getting into that background, really by trade, I'm a CPA with a focus in mergers and acquisitions. I've been crypto native, I'd say, since 2021. And have been full-time in crypto since the fall of 2021, where I started with Rook, really just helping them as their finance lead, treasury steward, whatever you want to call it. I think titles are kind of weird in this space, but like most DAOs and protocols in the space at this time, I think the maturity level from operations and just a risk management perspective on a lot of treasuries and their actual financial operations, whether that's through payroll or getting vendors paid, was pretty immature, right? So saw an opportunity come in and really provide a lot of help. And so have turned something that really didn't have any kind of infrastructure, processes, policies on the operations side into kind of a well-oiled machine to some degree. Have created a lot of tools, create a lot of dashboards, create a lot of processes that everybody kind of understands, and kind of set a cadence for how we do those things. And so it's been really transformative over at Rook. And I think it's something I could probably apply, especially on the operations side here. I know there's still some question marks around the treasury side of things and how that gets managed or stored. There's some investment firms that have really laid out some great proposals, and I think they're great options. But I think the intertwinement between the operations, the mission, and the external investment strategy, I think are in my mind very intertwined, and something I think I could help a lot with. So I'm sure there's lots of questions, concerns potentially. So I'm here to answer those in any way I can.
Awesome. I have some questions if others do not, but I wanted to open it up to see if there are any questions. You could put it in the chat or feel free to speak. Well, I guess, the first thing maybe, you've done a lot of great work for Rook. You've referenced that a lot in there. And so this proposal, though, would be not a full-time role because you would be continuing some services to Rook DAO and continuing there. So maybe just talk a little bit on how you think you can do both of these and manage those, and where the how does DXgov fit into that setup?
Yeah, no, I think it's a great question, and I can understand there being concerns, by parties about whether I'd be able to handle it. The way my thinking is, one, I'm a workaholic, so I work a lot, and I have a lot of flexibility with how I do that. Leadership over at Rook has, very much supported this decision to help out if it comes to that point. So that's one thing to say there. But high level, really a lot of what I try to do is develop processes that don't require a lot of manual time, especially by my end. So my goal is to really kind of come in and create ways that we can offboard a lot of these decision-making processes onto, the greater community, and as well as myself with just providing with more data, and then automating how we can do that and bifurcating processes on making decisions that we can act a little bit more nimbly. So I think those are two things that will help from a time commitment standpoint. But overall, really I just have such flexibility on the Rook side to be able to come in and also provide those same tools that I've built on Rook extremely quickly and get the operation side up and running. So I think that the time commitment is going to ebb and flow. I'd say there's probably an argument that it's going to be more than 30 hours, but I just wanted to be conscious of committing to over 40 hours, especially from the perception of what that might be. But yeah, hopefully that answers your question to some degree.
Yeah. And then maybe getting a little bit more into Rook here, where you have so much experience. Since I just have I think this is a Dune dashboard of the treasury. You can see here it's 44 million, and how that's split between stablecoin and ETH and Bitcoin. So that's WBTC and some other assets there. So you can see it is a sizable treasury, a little bit larger than DXDAO's. So maybe kind of talk about how this treasury is managed and where it's deployed, and how the allocation has changed over the time since you've been there.
Right. Yeah. So I'd say it's definitely, ebbed and morphed. I'd say it's always been relatively diversified from both a asset breakdown as well as a risk and reward standpoint. I'd say a lot of the changes that we've seen recently have probably occurred in 2021, really due to a lot of the blowups that we saw. I think we took a lot of action, condensing a lot of our positions, reducing counterparty risk wherever we possibly could, reducing, smart contract risks that maybe had multiple layers where there could be something in the stack that goes wrong. And so what you kind of see here is really, really what we define as core assets. And we actually have a proposal that defines what a core asset is. And there's certain attributes that need to be approved to be classified as a core asset. And then from there, we can basically have a framework that defines, okay, to protect ourselves and create some, bumpers for the DAO to operate within, we should have upper limits for what we think or lower limits for how much we're taking on with non-core assets. Because really, in my mind, and this, I think I laid this out pretty well in my proposal around my ethos, is, I think that the goal of a treasury, especially ones that are developing products like DXDAO, is to make sure you're funding and having enough reserves to always be able to make sure that the contributors creating those products are going to feel secure and comfy and sleep at night, and then be able to take advantage of opportunities as they come up, whether that's through M&A, whether that's through acquiring some IP that supports your product development. Making sure you have the treasury and prioritizing those needs is critical. And so that goes back to you don't want to take undue risk, right? If we're an investment DAO and the objective is number go up, then sure, maybe we want to be taking risk to try to capture really high APYs. But in my opinion, that's not what most DAO treasuries should be. So when it's not focused on reward as much, it's really focused around risk. What can we do to not get in trouble? And that's where these parameters, that's where defining and creating governance processes that set parameters for us to work within. Like I said, so limiting how much undue risk we can take, or requiring that we hold a certain amount of stables and having a certain amount of runway in years, right, to support ongoing needs. So all of this and all this data is what I, as a treasury steward or financial operations lead or whatever you want to call it, would do, is provide more data, provide that foundation for us to kind of build these investment decisions off of, so that we know that everything is kind of sitting on sturdier ground. So I don't know if that answers your question directly about diversification and just kind of the overall asset breakdown we see here or not, but.
And in terms of deployment of treasury assets, so I guess like I'm just looking at this. So this seems to be, the overall stablecoin and ETH amount, but this includes different types of stablecoins, and I think this probably includes staked ETH. So maybe like this is the breakdown of actual like tokens in the treasury. You can see there's the huge amount of DAI and the huge amount of USDC, and then mostly staked ETH and some WETH and that. So are all of these tokens just in the Rook treasury, or are those deployed earning fees or liquidity mining rewards?
There are a few. I think we just ended one position that was earning some fees. So I guess the staked ETH position, I think everybody kind of understands that a little bit better. That's all just sitting in the treasury. All the current stable coins right now, we've taken a really deliberate step back and said, look, DeFi has a lot of risk right now. The yields, relatively speaking, are kind of low unless you want to reach for some smart contract risk, or maybe you have to go to another layer 2, or whether that's a cross chain. Like there's opportunities on yield for stable coins, but we feel, at least at Rook, there's a little bit undue risk, and we've been spending a lot of time. It's probably 50 pages now, creating a stablecoin, an improved stablecoin framework where before we can even say what protocols we want to put those assets in, we first need to find what are the nuances and what are the actual structures that define these stablecoins, and or what are we comfortable with. Do we need to have like a super extremely decentralized stablecoins like RAI or LUSDC, or sorry, LUSD, or are we more comfortable operating with more centralized entities like USDC? And understanding the very basic nuances of those is really critical. And I think we've seen that firsthand with BUSD, sorry, getting investigated, right? Like, so there's these nuances that, while may not seem critical at times, are very critical. So right now we've taken a very deliberate approach and not have been deploying a lot of assets and just holding them in our treasury, while we feel the environment is a little bit risky. So we will be deploying those once that stablecoin framework is approved, as well as when yields and the overall DeFi market seem a little bit safer when it comes to a risk reward strategy. But other than that, like, it's a pretty basic portfolio, I guess you want to call it. So yeah, mostly ETH, staked ETH, and then a little bit of Bitcoin exposure, and the rest of stables. And again, a lot of our positions that were earning yield, we've condensed recently. And I see there's a question from Dave. We do use a Gnosis safe, so we are definitely different from you guys in the fact that we don't have direct token gated voting. I think there's a couple reasons for that, and happy to get into why that may be the case. But I think it really just comes down to the maturity level of our decentralization plans as compared to yours, is why we probably use that. So, but again, happy to get into those nuances if that's critical for anybody.
And I guess Rook is also similar to DXDAO in that, so it has an on-chain treasury, and then it has also done some buybacks of the Rook token. And I guess maybe a question to ask somebody who's been the finance lead at Rook is, why do you think Rook is trading below its circulating market cap? And like, what does that say about the financial position, or and maybe how that conversation about buybacks there? And I guess you're even seeing even like the fully diluted valuation is less than the overall treasury treasury amount.
Yeah, I'd say there's a couple of reasons for this. I'd say one is probably just due to like the nature of the space that we're interacting in from a product standpoint. I'd say if anybody's familiar with Rook, is we're in the MEV game, and MEV is a very complex topic that I think a lot of investors, especially retail, don't fully understand. The other reason about that is I think like our product market fit, while I think is extremely powerful and could be helpful for a lot of organizations, we fully acknowledge it's not there because of some of the core things in our tech stack that we have been developing or are kind of the cusp of doing. I think we're on the cusp of really finding product market fit and really taking things to the next level. And the reason that people, I should say investors, external investors outside the team and people who are close to like what's going on behind the scenes from the tech stack development don't have as much knowledge of that. And I think like it's a shame, but it's kind of the nature of the business because MEV is a very technical, it's not like just forking a UniV, a UniV2 swap, So it's not like something we can quickly swap and like, tailor and make a couple tweaks. Like this is like we're developing really groundbreaking technology from the ground floor and redoing things that other people probably can't even see right now. And so for us to be able to actually like capture, what we hope is market share and democratize MEV to the max is like that is our mission. It's not to just make a profit, right? Like that's what we're trying to do is redistribute MEV. It's a very long, hard technical process, and there's a lot that can go wrong if we were to reveal a lot of the details. So the delta between what the community knows and what the team knows is massive. And I think that there's been people who have gotten very frustrated with that and probably sold because they don't have as much insight into what's around the corner. So I think that's probably the biggest reason for that. I'd say the third reason is to accommodate that really intense product development. We have a very intense labor makeup, I guess you could say. So we have a burn rate between $6 to $7 million a year for our labor. So very intense. So maybe people think that we're not going to be able to capture market share in time because what they currently see is not really what we're trying to go for. We're not really doing a lot of marketing around what we have because, again, we don't have product market fit in the tech stack. So all these factors kind of culminate into a fact that people don't really understand what we're building here, and they don't have a full understanding of what's around the corner. So I know that's kind of a very nebulous way to answer that question. It's not necessarily like financial related, but like those are my explanations for that. I see Dave has a question about Rook. Rook does have voting power. Another big reason that there's probably some hit to our token price is we actually just took away a ton of token utility because of securities regulation. This goes back to the fact that we feel from a decentralization maturity level, we're not fully there. So we feel like there is some risk that somebody could be coming knocking on our door as a security if that were to be the case. And where was I going with that? So what we did was we removed the ability to stake and actually have a revenue share before we had a revenue share. Our tokenomics also included, and that would actually be 10% of the revenue that was produced, or the MEV would go to stakers. We also had a 4% token burn, so we were actually deflationary. And so now we are moving, or we are officially what do they call it? A useless governance token. And so we know that's not ideal from a token holder perspective, but we feel like for the long-term viability of what we're trying to build, that's what we feel as a DAO has had to happen. So the tokenomics have definitely taken a hit, and that's probably a really critical part to why our token price is the way it is compared to our treasury balance.
Yeah, and I think what kind of Dave is hinting at, which I also agree with, is like because there is some disconnect between Rook token holders owning the treasury, then that kind of I think creates this disconnect where people are not confident that it'll actually return value to Rook token holders. I think in this case, clearly, like the people that are driving the project are more like the founders, and they have a vision, and you're kind of executing on that. But I do think it like shows you if you have some disconnect between the token voting power and the actual treasury, that you're likely to see these disparities. Now, not to say that maybe it's right and that you can spend the treasury wisely and we'll invest in a lot of R&D that will end up like returning value to Rook. But I think one of the reasons, you get into this is because you don't have the like shareholder activism there. Yes,
Yep.
buy some cheap Rook is the other. And so and I didn't mean to spend so much time on Rook, but I mean, it's just an interesting one to kind of compare to. And so like, I guess this is the safe, right? The treasury safe. And so I guess there are 4 addresses, 204 like managing this. And so I mean, again, this is like, lots of different other groups or, DAOs are like this. And so it's just a different like setup from DXDAO, which is like, we just have, this treasury here that the only way we can access it is through proposals and lots of different things. So,
Yeah. And one thing I'll say about being on a multi-sig, again, like I think it's a situation we have to deal with, especially having, FDV that's 3 times our market cap or whatever it is at this point. There's a really risk that somebody could come in and try to drain the treasury. And so, that's a reason we also, not the reason, but it's a benefit to us currently by having multi-sig. But one thing that I've done when I came in and realized it was a multi-sig was, being a CPA, a big thing that they try to pound in our heads is, segregation of duties, implementation and critical design of key controls. And so what I've done is really came in and try to create a lot of these checks and balances around the multi-sig. So whether that is, I'm the one that does the recording and they're the ones that actually executing, and I have no ability to have access to funds. Whether that's me tagging every single transaction in real time for the community to be able to basically say, okay, is this transaction legit? Is this just, the multi-sigs enriching themselves? There's a lot of checks and balances around that. And I think that even if you do have like on-chain voting, I think there's probably still things that can be developed from a key control standpoint. And that's definitely something I'd want to identify and implement here as well.
Cool. And yeah, I mean, so you've chatted with folks from Melanie, I think Sky, myself, also some Discord chats with Dave, and you've been I think attending several of the calls the last few weeks, seeing some of the other ones. So I guess you're getting a little bit familiar with DXDAO and kind of how it operates. So you have some goals laid out here for what you'd want to be doing, but maybe, yeah, what do you see as the biggest opportunity or challenge that DXDAO kind of faces, or things you would like to help out on based on how you've been looking at these last few weeks?
Yeah, I think the biggest challenge that I see is trying to balance impact and reversibility. And I think I laid out there in the 5th bullet point in my priorities. This may be not possible. I think that there's always possibilities in some governance paths, but really what this means, so I'd say bifurcate treasury processes and decision-making, top-line balance, impact and reversibility of treasury actions, right? So what does that all mean? So one thing that we've done over at Rook, again, this is a little different because it's a multi-sig, but through this process, I tried to identify, okay, should every single decision go through general governance, or should some responsibility of making action happen take a different process? So swapping between USDC and DAI, very low impact, very high level, or very high end of reversibility. Should that go through a 16-day voting process that everybody has to get behind? In my opinion, probably not. Is it going to be, swapping USDC into Shiba Inu because we want to get super degen? Like, hopefully that's not the case. But something like that, where you're moving from a non-directional asset to a directional asset that has a higher level of subjectivity about the performance of what the performance could be and what are those risks associated with that, that should go through a lot more parties, whether that's even a committee or whether that's just through general governance and through a 16-day path. Those are the types of things that I want to say, okay, what decisions are we making from a both an operations and a treasury perspective that we can make more nimble, but still have checks and balances to make sure that we're not getting too risky or trying to move too quickly and taking on more risk than we should be identifying. So I think the 16-day voting window is going to be a challenge, but it's something that I have a lot of comfortability with, and is actually my biggest priority at Rook. Yeah. So would love to come in, work with the devs who are close to like actually making the execution happen from a voting standpoint to what happens on chain, and saying, okay, is there rule-based logic that we can create that everybody can see that still goes through general governance and gets buy-in, but once that's in place, would give us the ability to react to market forces and to take advantage of opportunities much more nimbly. So I'd say that's probably the biggest priority from a foundational perspective. It's going to allow me to be able to do, or anybody else do, a lot of other things as well.
Yeah, and I think that's actually something that is helpful across DXDAO. Like, I think basically, all proposals are not created equal, and having some delineation in terms of processes and kind of input. But I think at the core of that is not so much, oh, these things don't need to go through these processes. It's more of like, well, we can just transparently move this forward and everyone else can kind of watch that. So I think that's true for treasury stuff, but I also think that's true for a lot of other proposals in DXDAO, like trying to figure out how we can bucket those into different processes just on the 16 days thing. So that is only a requirement for interacting with an arbitrary smart contract. So we do have a multi-call scheme that passes in 8 days that is for whitelisted contracts. But right now, CowSwap is not whitelisted, so that's why we're using it. That may be something it would be helpful to get it takes some effort to just, I think you have to redeploy a smart contract with the whitelisted ones, but going through the process of like, what are the contracts that we want to have whitelisted through this multi-call scheme? Have they been audited? Like, have we used them before? Have we tested them in different ways? And so establishing that, I think, would be helpful. And then we can figure out how to like move that, get that integrated with the existing multi-call. I also think there's an opportunity to do this even more specialized and have something like another scheme that could be like 3 days precisely for those things you were saying, like swapping from DAI to USDC, right? If you could like permission that in one way. I do think Dave is making a good point here, though, that it's highly dependent on the custody of funds. So it's not just a decision-making process for DXDAO. It's like that's the only way that you can actually like execute on that, because the funds are in the treasury there. So I think that's like another maybe added challenge to figure out how can you maintain some of that custody. And this is where we get into like some of the Kopartki and Avant-Garde, who are able to provide that like non-custodial but quick decision process by having these vaults that have pre-approved actions that you can take, but the DAO still maintains sovereignty and custody over the funds and could withdraw them at any time. And it's only like a specific approved actions that they can do. And so, yeah, all these kind of challenges to balance here.
Yeah, I think, what like Kopartki has developed is a really great tool. I think this goes back to like a really high level ethos, is that if you guys see a problem and it's a governance problem and you guys are developing governance solutions, right? I think that there's a potential to create like new products, and that's why I want to do with treasury funds, is leverage the treasury funds to incentivize others to use your product suite or develop these new products. Well, that's a new feature, so you don't have to rely on this external vault that's been created. I mean, there's a situation where in your actual, maybe I'm talking on my ass a little bit here, but with your governance solutions, to develop almost like your own rule-based logic and vault of your own, right? Instead of continuously having to potentially pay fees for a product that was developed by an external party at one time and may have bugs. That way you guys can control, if owning custody is still highly important, you would have custody and control of those smart contracts. And I think that's a better solution longer term. But totally understand the custody aspect of it. And, I think self-custody is something that would almost entirely be something I would try to honor, except in a few cases of like dues and subscriptions and other like operating costs, like if it's just paying like G Suite or like I don't know, some other dues and subscriptions that happen every month and you don't have to write a proposal for it every time. So those are only a few situations where I see custody being something that would maybe go out of the treasury.
I'm just reading Dave's comments, but he's screaming FOSS, which stands for free and open source software. And so that's like a very strong, free open source software. That's a very strong belief here, and that the decentralization ethos limits DXDAO in a lot of ways, because it creates these obstacles we have to work around. But in the same coin, it also gives us the opportunity to develop things that are freely usable by everyone and that will not have rent extracted from it. And I think that's, in talking about fees, I think that's an important thing to think about long term, is the benefit of using smart contracts, the benefit of like having DeFi is that so much of this can be automated and is not need to be done by like a single individual or company, and that. But I think there's a lot of cool products being built now, and I think a key component of it is how it will integrate into governance. And so I think that's the area kind of I'm interested in too. But
maybe one tangent I'll say about FOSS, I guess I'm saying it with the cool kids these days, is as it relates to like why I'm in the space, and maybe I should have said this at the top of the hour or whatever. But my background is in mergers and acquisition. Like I own my company, which I don't really spend much time doing. It's just automated at this point. But I could have probably sat there and focused on my company and made a lot more money. But in the end, my passion lives here, and my goal is to make as much impact as possible. And we do that through smart contracts. We do that through FOSS, right? Like that's why I'm in this space, is because I have 2 kids, I have a third on the way, and I want them to grow up in a more in a world that emphasizes more on-chain processes, where people have more sovereignty over their assets and their ability to transact and interact with each other, whether that's through social media. And there's so many primitives that need to be developed to enable these type of things to happen. And I think that DXDAO could definitely be a really critical part and a building block to help, a lot of people grow and blossom and to be able to enable, that vision I have for the world and that hopefully my kids will be living in. So big tangent, but, free FOSS, as he said, or, whatever you want to call it, is really critical to my reason for being here.
Big tangent to big ideas.
There you go.
Cool. Other questions, comments for Daddy Matty? Cool. And maybe just an update on kind of how we're thinking about this process where we have all these different options. So as I said, I'm literally leaving in 5 minutes to go to the airport to Denver. And actually, I'm not going to Breckenridge, but that'll be it. Breckenridge is not by, so we'll be able to chat there a little bit. And then also, I know Avant-Garde and some Parky people are going to be there. So I think it'll be an opportunity to chat a little bit more and see if there's a solution that would work for DXDAO that could, and what that is. So maybe by early next week, there will be kind of some more thoughts on process recommendations for going forward here. And yeah, I've been talking with, I guess, Melanie. Yeah, Melanie's on the call has also been chatting about how we kind of manage this process because, as they're saying in the chat, right, this is the same. This was the new Treasury steward manager, whatever was approved in the budget, and then for the operations guild, so there was a certain amount approved to that, and then there was like an ongoing process for finding an individual contributor, and then we have this interesting ideas of setting up a new Treasury guild and maybe getting an investment manager involved. So kind of combining all of that together, and I think it's a very interesting process to help DXDAO think about what it wants to do as Treasury, what are kind of the strategic goals and everything. With that. So, yeah. Any questions or thoughts on?
I was just going to say, Rook, we're having a booth at Denver. So anybody who's interested in what we're doing or our Treasury or just wants to talk to me, really would love to kind of chat a little bit. And then I'll also be trying to meet up with you guys as well. So if you're going to be in Denver, would love to have a chat with you guys as well. And maybe you could ask me more hardcore questions.
More hardcore questions. Let's do it. He does. There is a really great. Where is this? Yeah, if you want to look at his good proposal, there's a lot of links to different things that he has done for Rook, which again are just more interesting, not just because of what it says about maybe contributing DXDAO, but just for like DXDAO, like what should we be thinking about and doing those there. So yeah, if you want to check those out in his post, that would be great. Awesome. The last two things I think also worth checking out here at the end. There's been a great post by Venki on Swapper token next steps. I think this is a big issue we've been chatting about for a long time. So it's great to see something in the forum. So I would encourage any and all to have a read and give comments and feedback on it. And then, last Thursday's DXD Monetary Policy Committee meeting gave some updates on the redemptor and buyback stats here. So you can go there for the latest stats on that. So cool. I think that's it for today. Thanks everyone for joining. Maddie, thanks for taking the time.
Yep, glad to be here and really thankful to be considered. Thanks, guys.
Great. Thanks everyone.
Thank you. Cheers.